afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the John Wilson Building. I'm Muriel Bowser. I am the mayor of Washington, D.C., and I'm with members of my administration to provide a short update on the 60th presidential inauguration, and we will have time for a few questions. So let me begin by congratulating President-elect Trump and his team on their victory. And I want to make it clear that Washington, D.C. is prepared to welcome the new administration, and we are committed to ensuring a smooth and collaborative transition. Washington, D.C., of course, is like no other place in America. We are a thriving, well-run community of D.C. residents, families, businesses, and over 25 million people visiting us every single year. We're also the proud seat of the federal government. And as the nation's capital, we are proud to represent around the world that we represent the strength and resilience of the American democracy. So we know that we can work together with the Trump administration to live up to our shared promise, and that is to ensure that Washington, D.C. remains the best city in the world. So we welcome discussions with the incoming administration about the federal workforce, as well as economic development strategies for federal buildings and parks in Washington, D.C. The district is, of course, home to some of the nation's most iconic landmarks and public spaces, and many of which are federal properties. So by developing a collaborative approach to maintaining and enhancing these spaces, we can ensure that they remain beautiful and accessible for all of the visitors to the nation's capital. And as you know, preparations for the upcoming presidential inauguration are ongoing. This event is certainly a celebration, but it's more than that. It represents the peaceful transfer of power which is a cornerstone of our democratic republic. So we are proud to host such an event and work with the United States Secret Service and federal partners, and we welcome our fellow Americans to come to Washington, D.C. at that time. So let me end by saying this: we will always do and fight for what's in the best interest of Washington. I've worked with 3 presidents, including President-elect Trump, and congressional leaders of both parties to advance the priorities of the district, and with a special focus on infrastructure, housing affordability, downtown revitalization, and our self-determination. And driven by our values, we will continue to pursue such an approach. Our city and our region are strong, resilient, and dedicated to a future filled with opportunity and growth. And so with this partnership, with the new administration, we will continue to uphold our vision for our city. We have communicated with the incoming administration regarding the inaugural preparation, and we expect that planning to continue over the next 60 days. I don't really know how many days now. Okay, a lot, not that many days. So we look forward to those continued conversations. And so with that, I will take a few questions. Yes.
Have you spoken with President-elect Trump, or do you plan to speak with him?
As I said just now, we have communicated with his team and have indicated that we would like to speak.
Should I just keep asking questions, or okay. Which specific issues do you think you could find common ground on, or the issues where you're specifically seeking his cooperation?
Well, I think we should all be focused on like the quick areas that aren't new to my discussions with the federal government. How we can make sure that our federal workforce is back to work is one big thing, and we would certainly share our thoughts about that. But more than that, I think we have opportunities, as we have been discussing for the better part of this year, of how we make better use of underutilized properties, especially the ones in the federal portfolio. Yes.
Mayor Rebecca with 7 News. Can you talk about, has DC at this point made any formal requests for assistance from other states with the National Guard? There have been several states that have come forward to say, should you need help, they're ready to help.
I'm going to let me ask the chief to talk about that.
Thank you for the question. What I will say is that, we've been in the planning process for the inauguration since the midsummer. We've reached out to several police agencies across the United States of America, and the majority of them have been very, very intentional about supporting us during the inauguration. As I've stated before, we hope we could get to 4,000 police officers to assist us in this process. We are close to that number. We do have other agencies who are continuing to reach out to us, and as they reach out, we will accept their request to provide mutual aid support for the District of Columbia during the inauguration process.
And a follow-up to that, can you paint a picture what you can say as far as the safety and security efforts that are ongoing and what we can expect leading up to inauguration?
Well, I mean, we still have another process to go. We have the certification of the election, and then we have the inauguration itself. And certainly working with the DC government agencies such as HSEMA, Fire and EMS, OUC, which are the parameters and the nerve center here for the District of Columbia, we continue to prepare with our internal agencies on a regular basis. With our federal partners, we've been meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis and sometimes a weekly basis to determine what intelligence information we may be gathering that may arise not just here in DC but across the U.S. And we will continue with those efforts as we progress into the certification of the election as well as the inauguration.
Yes, sir.
Question for Mayor Bowser.
Yep.
What contingency plans are in place in case the president-elect, once he is president, is not too cooperative with you?
We continue to do what we've done with all of the presidents, congressional leaderships, and other people that work with the District of Columbia. And so those are strategies that have worked well for us. I mean, I don't know that I can talk about all of the ways that we work with different leaders, but we have an Office of Intergovernmental Affairs in the district, and we are doing intergovernmental work every day of the year.
And as far as the legislative branch, given the recalibration next year, what inroads are you trying to make, on the Hill to stop further intrusion on local affairs?
Those conversations are ongoing, and we will plan early on when I was mayor, I would host a new members reception, and we are going to consider that for this incoming session. Yes.
I'm asking this question on Scott Taylor 7 News because your office hasn't answered it. Can you explain why no department in the district has a copy of your travel expenses for your trips to Miami in 2022 and Dubai in 2023? And why did you exclude them from your financial disclosure records?
We're talking about the inaugural today, and we're happy to get back to you on any other questions. Yep.
Mayor Bowser, could you comment on the preparations your administration is making in case President-elect Trump follows through on his many threats to, one, take over the D.C. government? He invokes your name, he talks about taking control from you, and the real likelihood, speaking to Republicans that I've been speaking to over the past few weeks, that while he may not go that far, there's a real likelihood he would do something around public safety, taking over the police department, bringing in National Guard. Can you tell us about your preparations for those two?
Well, Mark, you won't be surprised that we have been discussing and planning for many months in the case that the district has to defend itself and its values. And we will continue those preparations on all regards. In terms of what we should know, that we're still a country of laws, and the district has home rule, and the Congress could change it. They could. That is possible. That is probably, as you mentioned, not a likely occurrence. We have, when we know about threats to our police department, and in a very volatile time, those threats were made, but not executed. So what I think is important for all DC residents to recognize, we're not in a new place. We've been in this place before. And what we have done is we followed the law, and we defended ourselves. And that would be our approach in any further occurrence.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
What does that look like? Is it the Attorney General who would represent, for instance, if the administration wanted to do something that you were opposed to and that you thought perhaps you could block in court, is it the Attorney General who would then represent the district in that matter?
The Attorney General is the chief legal officer for the district, yes. Of course.
So what would that look like?
I can't speak specifically. What would it look like for us to defend ourselves in court?
Well,
Yeah, that's what it would look like.
so are you prepared to go to court and to take the Trump administration?
Listen, Mark, first of all, I know it is a tendency of most to think of and jump to the worst case scenarios. And certainly it's my job as mayor to plan and think about the worst case scenarios. But there are a lot of things that would make that not a good idea. And so, as I mentioned, we're a nation of laws, and we will defend ourselves according to the law.
Can I ask about immigration? Another cornerstone of his campaign was mass deportations. And certainly it would seem that given the power that the president has, the unique power the president has in Washington, D.C., that he could begin those mass deportations here in Washington, D.C. Are you prepared to cooperate with that or to fight that? What are you preparing for as far as that possibility playing out here in D.C.?
Well, the president enforces our immigration policies, not mayors, not governors, and that's nothing new. And so I think that we know what his stance is. The nation knows what his stance is, and he was elected to execute on his platform, I assume, in that regard. So we don't know what it's going to look like. I've heard just like all of you from the person that he's going to put in charge, and I think we should expect. I mean, we don't know where it's going to start. I'm not sure it matters where it starts, but people who are not documented, I think, are vulnerable. This is what I'll say, because while we don't have control over how a president enforces immigration policies, we should advocate for our residents who have lived here for many years, and we should advocate for the president and the Congress to establish immigration reforms that allow people to come into the country legally, or more importantly for us, many people in our city came here with TPS protection, and we think that they should have a pathway to citizenship. Yep.
Yes, Randy Bass with DC News Now. Question for Chief Smith, please. Quite a few events and demonstrations planned between now and the inauguration, not just January 6th. There are quite a few other things. Can you speak to the strain and burnout, if any, that this may place on the police department in the next, 60, 70 days, that we've got quite a bit going on here? Anything, to speak to that?
Well, currently we're tracking, I think, 4 major, if you want to call major events with respect to First Amendment activity. As you know, this is nothing new to the Metropolitan Police Department. We handle large protests and demonstrations, not just coming on the heels of a January 6th certification of the election and inauguration, but we do this year-round. And when you talk about burnout of our police officers, I will say that our police department is very resilient. This has been one year where we have maintained the opportunity to allow our officers to have leave, annual leave, whatever type of leave they'd like to take during the down periods. We signed up for this job. We understand what the risks are and what's associated with this. And as with any other protest and demonstration, we'll be prepared to address what comes with that.
This might be a question for the chief or mayor, either one. Do you know at this point how many people roughly you're expecting on Inauguration Day?
We will continue to monitor it. How we typically have an idea is looking at lodging. And as we get closer, we'll monitor the lodging reservations. Some other indicators are buses or things like that. So it may be a little too soon to estimate that.
But to your point, this is not the first time DC has held a large-scale event. Is there anything different as a whole in terms of planning, security, that you can speak to at this point?
I think the biggest difference has to do with January 6th preparations, the election certification preparations, the kind of security apparatus is structured differently because it's a national special security event. And the inauguration planning, I think, is proceeding as we would expect. Yeah.
Raphael with WSA 9. Are we still on track for the preemptive request for the National Guard for January 6th? And,
We'll send that when we have the type of information that we need.
But you're still on track to request that?
We probably, as I mentioned, it's a lot goes into determining what we need, and the Secret Service National Special Security apparatus is actually how we send up a request.
Just a follow-up. You've mentioned, obviously, you've been through a Trump administration. The district has been through a Trump administration. Your message to those who are concerned that, with less guardrails now, that DC would lose their autonomy. We're hearing from, people who live here that are saying, we're here. We want DC to be respected. Just your message to them over their concerns.
I think that I've tried to address that already, but I'll say it again. And I mean this sincerely. In some ways, who the president is and who the leaders are, we make the same plans. Okay, and a lot of people that are coming into office, we actually have to tell them about ourselves. And that's part of the reason why we have new member orientations. So we tell them we're a city, we take care of ourselves, we raise and spend our own money. We're a rail-run city, over 20 years of balanced budgets, AAA bond rating, improving schools. We tell them who we are. And we largely tell them, this is what you can do. And as federal government, this is what we need from you. And this is the conversation we'll have hopefully very soon. We need partners that help return the vibrancy of downtown Washington. And what I like to call, my staff doesn't like it when I say this, but the majesty of the federal government. Our city was built to demonstrate the beauty of a bureaucracy. Wide avenues, big, beautiful buildings, and a federal workforce that's focused on delivering for the American people. So I'll get to you in a second. So that is what we tell people. So the partnership that we need is to bring that vibrancy back to our town. So while we know that the administration is focused on making the federal government more efficient, like we're for that. But we also want to talk about how we have the infrastructure here for a productive workforce, and that's important. We also want to talk about some joint ideas that we, from my DMPED office, have already floated out to the marketplace of the federal buildings that are underutilized that could bring more visitors, more shoppers, more residents to the downtown. We want a partnership with them on that, as well as the underutilized parks. So that's what we're going to talk about, and that's what we tell the residents of Washington, D.C., is our city takes care of itself. Okay, who hasn't had a chance? Yep.
Pardon me, I came in a bit late, but...
A lot late, but okay.
Touche. Trump has said he wants to take 100,000 federal jobs and ship them outside of the region. You talked about the majesty. I mean, there is a lot that they bring to the city. I mean, well, how do you deal with that he wants to do that?
Well, not all of those jobs are in DC proper, and that is a question for the National Capital Region. And again, I think there's a lot that our region offers to attract and retain and have a productive federal workforce. So, you know, we're going to make our pitch.
Would you, and again, maybe this was asked, but do you plan to meet with the president-elect, have a sit-down with him, communicate some of those ideas?
We will welcome that.
Would you go to Mar-a-Lago? Would you welcome him when he comes to the White House? Would you meet before then?
We will welcome a meeting, and I'm not sure what form it's going to take.
But there's no planning yet for that kind of a thing. Is there planning for a meeting?
Well, we've requested one.
You request.
Okay. Yep.
Nick Iannelli, WTOP. It seems like DC hasn't had a normal inauguration for a while. 4 years ago, there was COVID, there was January 6th. How would you describe the differences people will see just in the atmosphere with this inauguration compared to 4 years ago?
Well, I think 4 years ago, people couldn't really come to the parade route, so I expect it to be a big difference. That people will be able to come, there will be able to be balls, big parties all over the city, so I expect it to be very different. Yes.
Obviously, Trump has made no secret of his desire to cancel the plans to move the FBI out to Greenbelt. How would you respond if he once again reverses those plans?
I don't know that I have delved into any particular kind of building or transaction yet. That move has a storied past, probably at least 10 years in the making. So we would have to have some talks about that. Yeah. Who hasn't had a chance? Yes.
Sarah from WU. I'm wondering if you could speak a bit to what's been on your mind this past week, not just as mayor, but as a mother, as a woman, and as a citizen, just on a personal level. What are you feeling?
Well, I've been very focused on what we need to do for our city and working with our teams to shore up our preparations and what comes next. And I think that that speaks to every other aspect of my life. Yes.
Beatrice Peterson, ABC News. President-elect Trump and President Biden will be having a meeting tomorrow. I was wondering, is there going to be any enhanced security postures in the city because of that joint meeting, or any enhanced street closures?
I don't know. Probably the president-elect gets the full package now of support, so there's usually street closures related to his movements. Yes.
Alyssa D'Souza, an ANC candidate in Navy Yard, last Friday, she said she received a congratulatory call from the executive office of the mayor, and that call was received just as Board of Elections is still counting votes in that election. So I'm just trying to get a sense, and I did get word that that call was made erroneously and preemptively by an employee. Just trying to get a sense of what has been done to rectify that situation, either by, talking to that employee or, making certain plans so that next time that doesn't happen, because it has caused some confusion on social media at least.
Well, a junior staffer got ahead of himself or herself. I mean, it's really that simple. And so I'm not going to talk about it any further.
But as far as rectifying that and putting things in place for the next time, what's coming down the pike as far as preventing that?
I don't even think that's worth my time talking about that. No, I think what we always do, and I'm not really sure why it happens so quickly, but we always congratulate elected officials. And typically it's done when it's certified, but I think somebody just got ahead of themselves. I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. It was one of our, well, I'm not even going to say that because I don't want that person attacked for a mistake that was an honest mistake. Okay, yes, I'm gonna take 3 more. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Quick off-topic for a colleague who's covering potential juvenile justice reform in an ongoing DC council meeting. Do you plan at all to push the council to eliminate the scrubbing of records for adults up to 25 under the YRA, and to end reduced sentences for below minimums for adults up to 25 under the YRA?
I would have to look at the piece of legislation that you're referring to. I'm happy to get back to you on that. Yes.
Thank you. What are you doing right now to advocate on the Hill for the RFK bill, and what do you think are its chances of passing before the end of the session?
I hope it passes, and we continue to advocate for it. And I can't really be more specific, but as you know, in the spring, I think it came out of the House of Representatives. It's been at the Senate. It's gone through regular order, and we hope the Senate is still legislating, and we hope that this gets through the process. I hope it will. It should.
Mayor
Yes.
Bowser, you mentioned that you've reached out to the Trump team. Have you heard back? Is that a dialogue, or have you simply reached out and are waiting to hear back?
I'm waiting to hear back.
And then if the president asked you to pave over Black Lives Matter Plaza, to cover up the language on Black Lives Matter Plaza, would you do that?
It's public art, and so I don't want to get in. I'm not going to get into a back and forth with you about a conversation we haven't had yet.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.